Now, so the idea of raising the minimum wage is actually gaining some support. A really large level of support, to be honest. Now, just recently, an NBC Wall Street Journal poll showed that a majority of Americans actually strongly favor raising the minimum wage to $10.10 an hour. Now, of all Americans, it's about 63%. When you divide it around party lines, of course, you get more Democrat. It's about in the 70%. Independents, somewhere around the 60s, the high 60s, and of course, Republicans, which are still a majority, but about 53%. Now, interestingly, on the same day, Bloomberg released a poll that said about 64% of Americans see increasing levels of income inequality as killing the American dream. Now, that's really kind of important. Now, with the minimum wage at such high levels of support, one would actually think that our politicians would listen. I mean, this is an easy issue. When you have such a high level of support, this would be such an easy issue to win an election on, to run on. If our Democrats were to run on this thing, on this minimum wage thing, you could really win. You could score a lot of political points. And I do think there are some Republicans that are actually warming up to that. One of those is, surprisingly, Papa Bear Bill O'Reilly. Now, let me show you what he had to say about the minimum wage.
Poll shows that 2/3 of Americans want the minimum wage upped.
Right.
Since only 6% of American workers get minimum wage, I say fine, up it. I don't think it's a big deal.
If it's a small incremental increase, it'll be all right. But let's talk.
I'm willing to pay, and I have means, so I know this is. But I think Americans in general would be willing to pay a few more cents for products to up it to $10.
Oh, really? Interesting. Very interesting. He's like, up it. Up it. Let's do it. And notice how Lou Dobbs, I just have to throw this in there, how I noticed Lou Dobbs, when he was describing this incrementally, he almost said a word progressive. But he's like, I don't want to say that word. Incremental. If it goes up incrementally, it'll be fine. But not progressively. I can't say that word. It's Fox News. Anyway. So this isn't exactly a ringing endorsement, but hey, it's a start. Okay, O'Reilly's in for the 10-10 because it doesn't matter, right? No, it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. Let's up it. We'll take it. And look, this isn't something that conservatives really have to be against. Conservatives can get behind a minimum wage increase. There's actually an article in the libertarian-leaning magazine American Conservative that lays out a pretty good argument for increasing the minimum wage. It's the argument that a lot of progressives, a lot of liberals like me have been using. But now they see it as an actually conservative thing. So when you think about it, the minimum wage, it's not really a partisan thing. But let me get into what this article from Ron Unz has to say. Large cuts in government taxation or regulation are unlikely to benefit the average sales clerk or waitress, the people that make the minimum wage. And the favored progressive proposal of a huge new government stimulus package has absolutely no chance of getting through Congress. But even if it did, few of the funds would flow to the low-paid private sector service workers cataloged above. And any broader social gains would rely upon a secondary boost in economic activity produced by putting extra government dollars into private pockets. He continues, so how might we possibly raise the wages of American workers to fill this huge roster of underpaid and lesser skilled positions, holding jobs which are almost entirely concentrated in the private service sector? Well, he says it's pretty simple. Perhaps the most effective means of raising their wages is simply to raise their wages, i.e. a minimum wage increase. He continues, the generally low-end jobs cataloged above are entirely in the non-tradable service sector. Oh, they could not be outsourced to even low-paid foreigners in Bangalore or Manila. Perhaps there might be some incentive to further automation, but the nature of the jobs in question, focused on personal interaction, requiring human skills, are exactly those least open to a mechanical replacement. Just consider the difficulty and expense of automating the job of a home health care aide, child care worker, or bartender. Those people don't make very much. You see, people think of minimum wage and they think of people who work at McDonald's. Is there a large amount of people who work for minimum wage at McDonald's and Walmart? Of course, but you leave out the home health aid worker. You leave out a lot of different jobs. There are actually some manufacturing jobs that in America that also are minimum wage jobs, which used to be much, much higher wages for blue-collar work. So a lot of people tend to leave those out. Now he continues, with direct replacement via outsourcing or automation unlikely, at least until Japan makes Terminator robots, employers responding to a higher minimum wage will be faced with the choice of either increasing the wages of their lowest paid workers by perhaps a couple of dollars per hour or eliminating their jobs. Now, that's what you hear a lot. You hear a lot of, well, they're just going to get rid of jobs. They're going to cut them. They're going to cut them all. Yeah, but you still need people to man the drive-thru. I don't think you notice that. You still need actual people to work the jobs. And they don't just create jobs that they don't need. So there's another thing. He says the logical business response would be to raise prices by a few percent to help cover increased costs while also trimming current profit margins. Oh my God, heresy. He continues, most of the jobs would still exist and the price changes would be small compared to typical fluctuations due to commodity and energy prices, international exchange rates, or Chinese production costs. Now this, of course, comes from Ron Unz, and he is a millionaire libertarian conservative that wants to hike the minimum wage. This can be a conservative idea too, because this helps. This helps regular Americans. This helps in a lot of different ways. Now he's actually trying to campaign in California to raise their minimum wage to $10 an hour. Look, the issue here with the minimum wage is that it doesn't have to be a liberal versus conservative issue. It just doesn't. It's not necessary. But the problem is with our elected Republicans. Remember, there are a lot of conservatives, true conservatives, that say, well, yeah, minimum wage, that makes sense. We raise it. We reduce dependency on government. It makes sense. Well, the Republicans in office, such as John Boehner, who is 100% against raising the minimum wage, the issue with some of these elected Republicans isn't that the policy is terrible. It's not like it's a bad policy, or it wouldn't help. Of course it would help. There are so many different reasons out there that show that it would help. It would help millions of people. I mean, studies show that raising the wage would bring millions of people out of poverty. Millions. And studies also show, to counter the, you're going to lose jobs argument that always comes up. Oh, it's a job killer. It's a job killer. You're going to kill jobs. Well, it shows that increases in wages actually have zero negative impact on hiring. There's a New Jersey study actually done in 1994 by economists David Card and Alan Kruger. Now, they surveyed about 400 restaurants over a long period of time and found no impact on jobs versus the restaurants surveyed right next door in Pennsylvania that had not passed a higher minimum wage. So you had New Jersey next to Pennsylvania. New Jersey raised their minimum wage, and these two economists surveyed the long-term impacts from doing that and found that there was actually no negative implications when it came to jobs in Jersey. And it's not that like the owners in Jersey of these restaurants were any more altruistic. It's Jersey. Come on. I love you, New Jersey. Don't hate. So look, this isn't that it's a bad policy. The problem in Washington is a political problem. The problem of not raising the minimum wage is a political problem. Democrats have been, of course, fighting to increase the minimum wage because that's one of their platforms. And it's super popular. And if Democrats want to get all populist, that's the direction that they should go, and you can see a lot of them going that way. Well, Republicans have fought against this. Not traditionally, but as of late, they've fought against the minimum wage. at least since Obama got into office, because I remember the last minimum wage, back when I was working minimum wage, was signed into law by George W. Bush. A very important thing to remember. But now Republicans tend to fight against it because of the increased role of money in politics. And of course, trying to be against anything the Democrats are for. Politics, man. And of course, you've got places like the NRA, no, not the National Rifle Association, but the National Restaurant Association, which pours tons and tons and tons of millions of dollars into Republican candidates that are running for office. They don't want this because then they're going to see their labor costs go up. And so once again, you've got the donors and the politics that are working against the Republicans on something that would help so many of their constituents and help the economy overall. This is a political issue. And of course, if the minimum wage is increased, people are going to look to the Democrats and say, well, look at how much you helped me. You helped get me out of poverty. We're going to vote Democrat. And that is one of the Republicans' biggest nightmares. So they're kind of stuck. And once people get their wages raised, and they find out, well, gee, the GOP has been kind of lying to me about this. No, there's not a $10 Big Mac. No, I didn't lose my job from getting a minimum wage increase. Well, I guess I'm going to vote for Democrats because the GOP are just liars. Well, if the GOP wants to really get ahead of this thing, they need to say, fuck off to the donors and take a more populist tone and actually try to pass a minimum wage, which your constituents, 53% of your constituents agree with. Over half. That's a huge majority. But look, when it comes down to this issue, politicians are doing what they always do, and that's play politics. And they're doing it with the livelihoods of millions of people. And so by not raising the wage, they're effectively keeping millions of people on welfare and government services such as SNAP. That's kind of the biggest irony right there, is that they're keeping people on government assistance that they don't like. It makes no sense except when you look at it from a political angle. This is a winning issue. It works economically. And I know some conservatives will, especially Christian conservatives out there, they got to know that this is also the moral thing to do. It's good politically for the Democrats and any Republican that wants to stand behind it. And it's the moral. Politics and morality on the same side? Well, that doesn't happen every day.